Eamon Khan here for Seconds Out. Pleasure to be joined by Duke McKenzie MBE for the first time in 2025. Duke, great to see you. Happy New Year. How was your New Year and Christmas?
Happy New Year, man. Yeah, really good, thank you. Nice and quiet with my family. I told you I've got two grandkids now, and they're growing rapidly. My eldest one, who's 3.5, I bought her a little car. You know them little electric cars.
Yeah.
I bought her this car. It's like pink. It's like a pink Mercedes. She loves it. And you know what? The look in her eye was priceless when I gave it to her. That's what it's all about, I guess, champ. Do you know what I mean? Just family time. Yeah, it's beautiful. I nearly ate myself into a coma.
Well, I'm very glad you didn't, Duke, because we wouldn't be able to have these conversations. And let's get straight into it. Top of the boxing news today was an announcement by Tyson Fury stating that that's his bag, that's him hanging up the gloves. He's retiring from boxing. Now, it does feel that we've been at this juncture before, but what was your reaction to that news from Tyson Fury saying he's not continuing in boxing?
Yeah, probably the same as yourself and probably everybody else that's involved with the sport of boxing. We have heard it before, and it sounds to me like negotiations have been going on between, excuse me, between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Maybe he hasn't had the rub of the green. Maybe, because he's not champion anymore. Maybe the money's not what he thought it would be. Maybe he's trying to hold somebody to ransom. There's a lot of money floating around now in boxing, as I'm sure you're well aware. And first and foremost, Tyson Fury is a businessman,
Hmm.
and this is the business of boxing. So if you don't get what you want, you throw all your toys out your pram until you do get what you want. So do I blame him? Probably not, because this potentially is going to be his last fight.
There was a comment made towards the end. Well, it was right at the end of the statement. It said Dick Turpin wore a mask. I wonder what you read from that. Was that regarding the AJ negotiations? What was your read on that one?
Yeah, exactly. He's obviously gone to the negotiating tables, and the figures aren't adding up in his mind. What he clearly forgets is he's an ex-champion, not a current champion. As is Anthony Joshua. They're both former champions. So really, there's not much room for bartering and start making demands on what you want and what you don't want. I mean, it's still a massive fight. People still want to see it, regardless of whether they're champions or they're not champions. These two should have probably fought at least probably 4 or 5 years ago, at least, but they haven't, and now they're both in the twilight of their career. They may get it together. So it's a fight probably for boxing fans, the newcomers, the newbies that are coming into boxing, the YouTube boxing fans, the new audience that's been involved in boxing now that don't really know too much about the sport. It's probably more for them as opposed to your hardcore boxing fan. I'm a hardcore boxing fan. I love the sport of boxing. I know what it entails, and I know who's involved in it. I know who's doing what to who. So it's still a bit of a sexy fight, isn't it?
The other way that I thought the Dick Turpin wore a mask could have been um, viewed as was potentially Fury feeling that he was robbed, I guess, in the two fights against Alexander Usyk. Now, I did watch Carl Froch's reaction to Fury's announcement, and he suggested that maybe Fury is struggling to deal with those two losses. Do you think that might be part of why he's announced this retirement?
Tyson Fury would struggle with any loss. The fact that he's lost the same guy twice must be absolutely destroying him. It must be. You know, I can't help but think, he's got a mental health condition. He's
Yeah.
bipolar by all accounts, and maybe he's having a turn where he probably feels like he can't hold on to reality. But the reality is he got beat, and he got comfortably beaten, more comfortable in the second fight than the first fight. And there's not a lot he can do about that because the fight wasn't close enough to warrant a third fight. Even if there was a third fight, Usyk would beat him again because Alexander Usyk does what Alexander does, and he knows how to beat your average heavyweight. And I mean, like I say, I don't really think that fight warrants that fight wouldn't warrant a third meeting. The only place for Fury to go is AJ because it's a money fight. It's a money fight for both of them. You know, win, lose or draw. The loser's got nowhere to go, certainly. So maybe Fury's he's just covering all of his angles. If in the event he does lose, he wants to get top dollar for it.
Yeah, let's take this announcement on face value, and Fury is hanging up the gloves. What does that mean to British boxing, having lost then Fury and AJ, and it have never materialized?
It'd be sad in the event that they didn't fight when they should have done. Like I say, this fight should have happened at least 4 or 5 years ago, but it didn't for obvious reasons. Will the public really miss it? Probably not. There's a young breed of heavyweight coming through right now that are going to probably turn the heavyweight scene on its head. You know, I like the current state of heavyweight boxing right now. It's in a very healthy position, I think, certainly from our standpoint, this country's standpoint. We've got some good young fighters coming through. So, will they be missed? Probably not. You know, everything evolves, everything takes its course, its natural turn of events. And listen, they've had their times, both of them. They can hold their head proud knowing that they've both been world champions and made a bucket load of money. You can ride off into the sunset.
And taking Fury's announcement at face value, what would be Fury's legacy? What would you say of Fury's career?
Well, listen, he's been world champion. Doesn't really get any better than that. And like I say, he's earned a bucket load of money. It doesn't get any better than that. He hasn't been terribly beat up and, you know, absolutely ravaged, and he's not punch drunk. Everything has a time scale, and, you know, we're coming to the end of his time scale now. Everything has a shelf life, and that's exactly where he finds himself right now.
Moving on to the press conference that happened today, we've discussed Daniel Dubois versus Joe Parker to some degree, but I did want to ask you, during the press conference, Joe Parker kind of half put it on Daniel and said, "Why did you do that? Why did you storm the ring after Usyk won his repeat victory over Tyson Fury? Are you overlooking me in a sense? Do you feel that Daniel might have taken an eye off of Joe Parker?"
Two chances, slim and none. Absolutely no chance. Daniel Dubois is one of these guys, really, that he's so driven right now. He's so focused right now. It doesn't really matter. You know, talk's cheap, ultimately. And Daniel Dubois is not one of these guys to take his eyes off the prize. He's waited a long time to get to where he is now. You know that, and I know that. I don't think for 1 minute that he's taking his eyes off Joseph Parker. He knows Daniel Dubois. He wants to go and do a job on Joseph Parker. He doesn't just want to go and beat him. He wants to knock him out. Now, as I've said before, with the exception of Alexander Usyk, I don't know who beats Daniel Dubois right now, because Daniel Dubois can box and he can punch. Daniel Dubois has got good stamina. There aren't enough chinks in his armour to suggest that he's slipping, or, you know, he gets cut, or he's had a couple of hiccups, you know, a few fights ago, but he's more than rectified that now. He's more than justified that, not to anybody else, just to himself, that he's a world champion in his own right. So, like I say, Daniel Dubois is really going to take a lot of holding, mate.
The reports are flying around. Nothing's 100% confirmed yet, but it seems like we're creeping ever closer towards Chris Eubank Jr. And Conor Benn at middleweight, with a rehydration clause of 170 pounds on the night. Hearing that, does that make your prediction for the fight any different as to how that fight goes?
Does it make my prediction any different? Probably suits Benn more than it does Eubank. Does it sway my prediction? Well, you know, the fight could probably go either way, because again, these aren't the best two. I mean, what's it made at 170 pounds, which is in between middle and super middle, right?
Super middle and light heavy.
Sorry, look, super middle and light heavy.
Yeah.
Well, it favours Eubank then, doesn't it? It favours Eubank, you know, strongly. I would have thought, because he's not a welterweight or even a light middleweight or a middleweight, or, you know, it favours Eubank more. 170. Wow. Yeah, yeah, for me, then the chips are firmly stacked in Eubank's corner.
Mhm.
You know, because Benn might find that Eubank is just too big for him.
Mhm. Duke, that's about all I have for today's interview. Appreciate you jumping on at short notice. And of course, once again, thank you for your time. If there's anything you'd like to say as to 2025 and your hopes for boxing, feel free to do so.
Well, you know, listen, we've got a massive card coming up next month, right? In Saudi, you got I think six or seven title fights on one belt. You know, headlined by the quite brilliant Bivol and Birbitev, right? They're top lining. That's going to be listen. That's what we want to see. That's real boxing, right? Of the highest order. You know, you got Callum Smith, you got Josh Bawatsi, also on that card. You know, Virgil Ortiz on that card. It's stacked with talent. You know, and I hope to God I'm there. I want to be. You know, I'd love to be there working on that fight because that's like a gourmet dinner.
Let me just follow that up, Duke, because look, you've been in boxing a lot longer than I have, and I do hear the phrase "stacked card" bounded up a lot in this generation of boxing, and I do agree that this card coming up does or is deserving of that kind of cliched phrase of being a stacked card, but it is proving to be that. Can you remember any cards of history? Because a lot of people kind of bring up Don King cards as being something that would rival this. Would you say that it's as good or
Yeah.
even better than the past cards that Don King provided?
No, I wouldn't say it's better. You know, Don King was notorious for putting on, you know, 4 or 5 world title fights on one card back in the 70s, excuse me, 80s. So no, it's nothing, the concept's nothing new, but it's refreshing because, you know, we've had Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren tell us for years, you know, these fights can't be made for whatever the reason. And they haven't managed to put on a show like this between them or even individually. So really, it's great for the boxing fan, and it's great for the boxing, you know, experts, quote unquote, you know, to see that finally we're getting the best fighting the best. And there are no barriers. There's no reason why the best shouldn't fight the best. And these are really exciting times for boxing. And I can't remember a time, certainly not in modern day boxing, where we're getting so many good fights back to back. You know, after this show, there'll be another one. You know, give it another month or two, and there'll be another stack card, and then there's going to be another one and another one. So, long may it continue.
Do you think we see Canelo Crawford this year?
Yeah, 100%. Money talks ultimately, and everybody's got their price. And with the sort of money that they're talking about now, you know, in like I say, in all of these weight divisions and all of these mouth-watering fights, then yeah, I think we will definitely get Canelo v Crawford this year.
Duke, pleasure. Thank you so much for speaking to Seconds Out. Already looking forward to our next chat and looking
No,
forward to
thank you,
many
champ.
in 2025. Much appreciated, sir.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you. God bless.